The FND fog feeling. We're reading from page 241 of FND Recovery Guide. How do you feel right before you get symptoms? My CBT provider once asked me. It was a simple question, but it unlocked a pivotal realization. Until that moment, I had never stopped to examine the sensations that preceded my symptoms. Reflecting on that question, I began to notice a pattern, a distinct feeling that would envelop me before the symptoms took hold. I started calling it the FND state. It was like a dense, invisible cloud that blurred my thoughts, heightened my emotions, and triggered an overwhelming sense of unease. My muscles scrunched up, ready to fight an unseen threat. My heart would race. I might get shortness of breath. It was like living in a fog. We covered the scientific details behind the FND fog feeling in chapter 3. Basically, the FND fog feeling is how you feel when the quadruple F, fight, flight, fawn, freeze response takes over your body. But early in my journey, I had only my intuition to guide me. Medical care and information were sparse, so I pieced together my experiences trying to make sense of the chaos. The feeling often began with my heart racing and my mind spinning in circles. My thoughts would become jumbled, and sometimes I felt an uncontrollable urge to scream. It was as if my body was flooded with adrenaline while simultaneously drained of all energy. A maddening contradiction. Looking back, I now understand this was a manifestation of the human danger response: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Depending on the day and the circumstance, my body might go straight to freeze, straight to another F, or straight to a combination of any of the 4 F responses. What made it even more bewildering was how small and seemingly insignificant events could trigger this extreme reaction. For example, one day I heard the faint, unexpected noise of the recliner's footrest snapping closed. My back was turned as I walked down the hall, and the sound startled me. In an instant, my body reacted. I collapsed to the floor, paralyzed by the freeze response. The FND symptom cluster. When the FND fog feeling took hold and I pushed myself to power through, I often experienced what I call an FND symptom cluster. These episodes could include any number of symptoms from my growing list with varying intensity. It felt like my body was cycling through a malfunctioning operating system, randomly throwing errors. Depending on the day, the triggers, and how far I'd already pushed myself, my symptoms ranged from manageable to utterly debilitating. Sometimes I'd cycle through the 4 Fs in rapid succession: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Or I'd experience them simultaneously, amplifying the chaos. The longer I tried to press forward and ignore the fog, the worse the symptoms became. The FND symptoms I experienced. My personal FND symptoms. Living with functional neurological disorder means facing a bewildering array of symptoms that affect every facet of daily life. From the overwhelming sensory experiences to unpredictable motor, speech, and cognitive challenges, FND is hard to live with. I know this all too well. I felt the terror and isolation that came with being trapped inside a body and mind that don't work. I've lived through many of the symptoms of functional neurological disorder, each one devastating in its own way. Each moment a reminder of how my life was slipping from my grasp. The journey through FND was an unpredictable nightmare, but I've come to understand that each symptom tells a story about how my brain was struggling to make sense of the world. Here are some of the most life-altering symptoms I experienced. Sudden falls. This became perhaps my longest lasting and most severe symptom. At any given moment, my legs would give out, sometimes at the knees, other times at the waist, sending me crashing to the ground. It felt like my body was betraying me. I would sometimes manage to catch myself in a squat, but more often than not, I was helpless and my body went limp. I'd be flung to the floor without warning. Oddly, I could often protect my head instinctively, an automatic response that prevented me from harm. Looking back, I realized how deeply intelligent the body is, forcing me into rest without causing permanent injury. The science behind this is the freeze response, where the body's natural stress response can trigger sudden physical immobility. And I cite a lot of sources after that statement. Cognitive fog. It was as though my thoughts were scattered in 1,000 different directions. Everything felt slow and disorganized. Trying to think clearly was like trying to catch water in my hands. Cognitive slowing, or bradyphrenia, I'm not sure, hopefully I pronounced that right, is a well-known symptom in FND where both mental processing and physical movements are delayed, often described as moving through deep mud. Speech impairment. Words would escape me, and when I could find them, they were often jumbled. Sometimes all I could muster were short, broken sentences like, need food. Other times I couldn't speak at all, only able to make a pitiful noise. This is an example of how the brain's speech centers can be temporarily disrupted by FND, resulting in speech impairment. Noise sensitivity. Everyday sounds became unbearable. A noise as small as the click of a closing foot of a recliner was enough to send me to the floor. I began carrying earplugs with me everywhere, constantly taking them in and out as my sensitivity fluctuated. It felt as if the volume of life was always switching between normal and someone shouting into a megaphone. The heightened sensitivity to sound in FND is linked to how the brain processes sensory inputs, with many patients reporting that normal sounds become overwhelming and distorted. And I cited a source there. Functional seizures. Imagine shaking uncontrollably while still fully aware. Functional seizures, or psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, are just that, convulsive episodes without the brain's electrical discharges that characterize epileptic seizures. They result from disruptions in how brain networks communicate. And while the shaking can feel like a seizure, the person remains conscious, providing a critical difference from epileptic seizures. Functional tremors. My right hand would shake uncontrollably, rotating back and forth quickly like a freshly caught flopping fish. This kind of tremor is typical in FND, known as a functional tremor, where the shaking is inconsistent and can often be reduced or worsened depending on distraction. It's a sign that brain function, not muscle damage, is at the root of the problem. Functional cognitive motor slowing. Moving felt like trudging through thick, sticky mud. Each step felt heavy, as if my body was slowing down, unable to keep pace with my thoughts. I initially thought I might be experiencing absence seizures, but in truth, I was probably suffering from functional cognitive motor slowing. Research shows that in neurological disorders, brain disruptions can make it hard to think and move at the same time. I cited a source there. In FND, similar brain changes may explain the feeling of both mental and physical slowing. Visual overstimulation. The world would become overwhelming. When large crowds gathered, like after a church service, the sheer amount of movement would send my brain into overload. Everything around me would become too much to process. Visual overstimulation is a known symptom of FND, where sensory input becomes so intense that the brain struggles to make sense of it all, often leading to confusion or a heightened sense of disorientation. Screaming episodes. Sometimes the frustration built up so much that I couldn't hold it in any longer. My emotions exploded in the form of uncontrollable screaming. This was my fight response, but it was trapped inside my body. In FND, emotional responses can become dysregulated, often leading to episodes like these where anger or frustration bursts out uncontrollably due to disruptions in how the brain processes emotions, and there are sources there cited. Neck gives out. My head would feel unbearably heavy, and for a moment, my neck couldn't support it. My head would drop forward like a newborn's, and I'd be left in a crumpled heap. This symptom, known as functional weakness of the neck, reflects how FND disrupts the brain's regulation of voluntary motor control, making movements like holding up one's head nearly impossible at times. Vision problems. I have excellent vision. I don't need glasses or contacts. In fact, while one eye is 20/20 vision, my other eye is even better than normal at 20/30 visual acuity. But after I got FND, at times I'd see spots or one particular dead pixel in my left eye. This distorted my vision, adding to my confusion and disorientation. Visual disturbances like this, where patients report seeing spots or flashes, are a common experience in FND, often arising from how the brain misinterprets visual information. And there's a source cited there. Temperature, sensitivity, and regulation trouble. The cold would hit me like a shock wave, even when the temperature around me didn't warrant it. Similarly, I'd often get chills in warm environments. Both temperature sensitivity and regulation issues are known in FND, where the brain's inability to process sensory signals can lead to abnormal perceptions of cold or warmth, difficulty switching tasks, and multitasking. Once upon a time, I could juggle multiple tasks effortlessly, writing a paper, listening to a podcast, and managing background noise without issue. Now my brain could only focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking became an impossible task as my brain couldn't handle the influx of thoughts. In FND, this is a common cognitive impairment, where the ability to switch attention between tasks is severely impaired. There's a bunch of sources there. Startling easily. I became so easily startled that my body would flinch at the smallest sound or movement. This heightened startle reflex is another aspect of FND caused by disruptions in the brain's sensory processing symptoms. Sources cited there. Chronic fatigue. For so long, I had no energy. There's an analogy you may have seen online that compares energy to spoons. Some days you wake up with just 4 spoons. Other days you might have 400. Let's say your daily routine of basic tasks take 40 spoons, but today you only have 4. That's what chronic fatigue feels like. You must prioritize the most necessary tasks, leaving many things for others. If you prioritize the wrong task and hit a roadblock, it's frustrating and disheartening. You spent what little energy you had on something that gives no return. On a day when you have more spoons, though, you don't feel as hopeless when faced with obstacles because you have enough energy to waste. Some without the same level of despair. Get it? Recent studies shed light on why this happens. Research has shown that chronic fatigue can stem from disruptions in the autonomic nervous system and mitochondrial dysfunction, which means the body's energy systems are literally less efficient. This explains why even simple tasks can feel like monumental efforts, and why, on some days, it's a fight just to keep going. The good news is there is hope for healing. It takes time, patience, and a deeper understanding of what's happening inside your body. 9.5 high-stakes decision. If I had resigned myself to my fate and refused to fight for a cure, I never would have found a cure, and I would still be miserable every day. I'm glad I chose to fight. And we could keep reading, but we'll call that good for today. FND Recovery Guide is available on Amazon right now, and this is volume 1, but volume 2 is actually available in paperback right now, and the other formats will be available by October 31st. I hope this helps you.